Jannik Sinner just broke his silence. What happened after the Madrid Open is not a standard interview comment. It is a direct psychological strike. The Madrid Open ended with massive questions about the physical state of Carlos Alcaraz. His right arm was heavily wrapped in a compression sleeve. The pain was visible to everyone in the stadium. The home crowd watched their young champion struggle to find his explosive rhythm. He hesitated on his signature forehand. He avoided hitting with maximum power. He sliced the ball repeatedly to protect his wrist and arm. This defensive style is completely unnatural for him. Right in the middle of this physical crisis, Jannik Sinner delivered a message to the tennis world. He spoke about survival on the ATP Tour. He talked about the absolute necessity of protecting the body to achieve long-term greatness. Tennis experts immediately recognized the true meaning. It was not sympathy for a rival. It was a calculated mental blow aimed straight at the Spanish camp. Sinner did not use sarcasm or aggression. His weapon is cold reality. That chilling calmness is exactly what caused shockwaves inside the team of Juan Carlos Ferrero. The contrast between the two stars is terrifying right now. One player is fighting his own body just to stay on the court. The other is a relentless machine waiting to take over the throne. But to understand why the cold reality check from Sinner is causing absolute chaos inside the Alcaraz camp, we need to look at what really happened in the shadows of Madrid. The tension did not start with the message itself. It started in the locker rooms weeks ago. It built on a heavy foundation of physical vulnerability. Carlos Alcaraz arrived in Madrid with immense pressure from his country. He was the defending champion. The Spanish fans expected absolute dominance on the red clay. Instead, they saw a player trying to survive his own mechanics. The forearm issue forced him to withdraw from earlier clay court tournaments. In Madrid, the pain lingered like a dark cloud over his campaign. Every forehand carried a massive risk. Every explosive movement came with a severe physical cost. Juan Carlos Ferrero faced an absolute nightmare behind the scenes. He had to manage strict medical protocols while trying to keep his player competitive against the best in the world. Ferrero is known for his intense and demanding coaching style. Watching his star pupil hold back on shots created visible frustration in the player box. The camera caught Ferrero looking deeply concerned during critical points. Now look across the net. Look at the system Jannik Sinner built with Darren Cahill. It is the exact opposite reality. Sinner operates with ruthless efficiency. His movements are optimized to prevent exhaustion and joint strain. His team prioritizes longevity over flashy winners and desperate defense. They built a system designed to crush opponents without destroying the athlete in the process. Darren Cahill brings a calm and calculated approach that directly contrasts the fiery tension in the Spanish camp. This brings us to the core of the message from Sinner. The Italian made it clear that raw talent means absolutely nothing if the body breaks down under pressure. You cannot dominate the tour from a physical therapy table. This is the brutal truth of modern tennis. The new generation is realizing that physical preservation is the ultimate weapon for winning multiple Grand Slam titles. Alcaraz relies on explosive power and incredible speed. He pushes his muscles to the absolute limit on every single point. Sinner relies on flawless positioning and devastating consistency. He wins matches rapidly to save energy for the next round. The message from Sinner highlighted this glaring difference for the entire world to see. He essentially exposed the biggest flaw in the Spanish system. The brutal schedule is punishing Alcaraz while Sinner glides through the draw. While Alcaraz fought his own body on the clay, Sinner was watching closely. Sinner was calculating his next move. The psychological warfare we are seeing right now will define the future of tennis for the next decade. To stay ahead of these tactical battles and understand every critical shift on the tour, make sure you join our community and subscribe to our coverage as we break down the reality behind the headlines. Let us look at the raw data. The numbers from Madrid expose exactly why the words of Sinner hit so hard. Analysts tracked the average forehand speed of Carlos Alcaraz during the tournament. The drop is absolutely alarming. During his peak physical state last year, his ground strokes were lethal weapons of pure acceleration. He routinely punished opponents with forehands exceeding 90 miles per hour. In Madrid, those numbers plummeted drastically. He was not stepping into the ball with his usual confidence. He was backing away and trying to guide the ball over the net to minimize the shock to his forearm. The heavy medical tape on his right arm told only half the story. The tracking data revealed the real tragedy playing out on the clay. His court coverage speed also declined as the matches dragged on. He spent hours on the court grinding through exhausting rallies, while clearly compromised. Every time he stretched for a wide ball, you could see the hesitation in his footwork. He sliced his returns instead of driving them deep. He played defensive tennis, because his body refused to execute his aggressive instincts. The high altitude of Madrid usually helps the ball fly faster through the air. This environment should have favored the massive power of Alcaraz. Instead, it highlighted his complete inability to generate pace. Now compare these metrics to Jannik Sinner. The data paints a terrifying picture for the Spanish camp. Sinner is finishing his matches in record time. He operates like a clinical surgeon on the court. He uses pinpoint accuracy to move his opponents around, while he stays anchored securely to the baseline. The average rally length for Sinner is significantly shorter than the tour average. His overall time spent on court per tournament is drastically lower than Alcaraz. This is not a coincidence at all. This is a highly calculated strategy to preserve energy for the late stages of Grand Slams. Sinner understands that winning a Masters event means absolutely nothing if you arrive at Roland Garros completely broken. His message about physical survival is backed by undeniable mathematics. The explosive and physical style of Alcaraz is currently his greatest asset and his biggest liability. He relies on stretching to the absolute limit and hitting impossible recovery shots from deep behind the baseline. That style thrills the crowd in every stadium around the world. It creates viral highlights that break the internet daily, but it is tearing his muscles and joints apart week after week. The warning from Sinner highlights this specific technical vulnerability. The Italian player is effectively pointing out that human biology cannot sustain the current playstyle of Alcaraz. He needs a fundamental shift in how he constructs points. Sinner proved that a structured and precise game plan beats chaotic brilliance when it comes to a grueling 10-month season. Sinner attacks early in the rally. He flattens out his shots to rob his opponent of precious time. Alcaraz builds points through heavy spin and insane athleticism. The physical toll of the Spanish method is now visible for everyone to witness. Back in Spain, the silence from Juan Carlos Ferrero is deafening. They know exactly what this situation means for the rest of the year. The team of Carlos Alcaraz returned home to face a harsh reality. The medical staff must evaluate the microscopic damage to his right arm muscles. But Ferrero faces a much bigger tactical problem. He has to completely rebuild the tournament schedule and perhaps rethink their entire coaching philosophy. The silence from their camp is highly strategic. They are not rushing to social media to post optimistic workout videos. They are deeply analyzing the threat that Sinner just verbalized to the entire world. Ferrero is a legendary coach who demands absolute perfection from his players. He knows that Sinner is entirely correct in his cold assessment. You cannot win Roland Garros if you cannot swing your racket without sharp pain shooting up your arm. The pressure on Ferrero is immense right now. He must convince a young and hungry champion to slow down his career trajectory. He has to force Alcaraz to skip major tournaments and rest his injured arm. This goes against the natural competitive instincts of Carlos. The young star wants to fight for every single trophy available. Ferrero has to act as the ultimate barrier between the ambition of his player and total physical ruin. It is a very delicate balancing act. Push too hard and the player breaks down entirely. Hold him back too much, and he loses his competitive edge against rivals who are constantly improving. This brings up a massive question for everyone watching this rivalry unfold. Do you believe the calculated system of Jannik Sinner will ultimately destroy the explosive era of Carlos Alcaraz on the ATP Tour? Tell us your exact thoughts in the comments below, because the tennis world is completely divided on this survival strategy. The analysts across the ATP Tour are already jumping on this new narrative. Experts are pointing out a major psychological shift in the locker room. Sinner and Alcaraz are part of the exact same young generation. They are supposed to be peers fighting for the same historical space for the next 15 years. But the Italian is now speaking like a veteran mentor. He has positioned himself as the older and wiser figure in this intense rivalry. He has mastered the art of load management while Alcaraz is learning a painful and public lesson in endurance. This shifts the entire power dynamic of their relationship. Sinner is no longer the quiet challenger trying to catch up to the flamboyant Spanish prodigy. Sinner is setting the gold standard for what it takes to survive the modern era of professional tennis. The power dynamic has officially flipped on its head. Alcaraz is now the one who must adapt his game to survive the brutal pace set by Sinner. The team around Sinner built an impenetrable fortress of physical stability. They monitor every calorie consumed and every practice hour logged. The team around Alcaraz is desperately trying to patch up a leaking ship before the biggest clay court tournaments of the year begin. The contrast is jarring for tennis purists. When Sinner steps onto the court, he looks fresh and invincible. When Alcaraz steps onto the court, fans hold their breath, hoping he does not grab his arm in pain after a heavy forehand. This creates a massive psychological advantage for Sinner before the first serve is even hit. Every player on the tour sees the glaring vulnerability of Alcaraz right now. They know they can extend rallies to test his physical endurance. They know his primary weapons are heavily compromised. Players who used to fear him are now devising strategies to outlast him. Other contenders are watching this dynamic unfold with intense interest. Players like Alexander Zverev and Daniil Medvedev are witnessing the blueprint on how to dismantle the Spanish phenomenon. Sinner has essentially given the entire locker room the instruction manual. You do not need to hit harder than Alcaraz. You just need to survive longer than his body can endure. This realization is incredibly dangerous for Ferrero and his coaching staff. They are no longer just fighting one Italian rival. They are fighting a fundamental shift in how the entire ATP Tour approaches matches against Carlos. The physical demands of the sport have reached an unprecedented level. The balls are heavier and the courts are slower. Every single match is an absolute war of attrition. Sinner figured out the cheat code to this grueling reality. Alcaraz is still trying to break through the wall using pure brute force. The tragedy of Madrid is that the brute force method finally failed on a massive stage. The medical tape is a symbol of a broken system. The silence from Ferrero is an admission of guilt. They pushed their prodigy too far, and now they are paying the ultimate price. The road to Roland Garros looks incredibly bleak right now. The red clay of Paris demands ultimate physical perfection. It is the most exhausting surface in the world. If you arrive in Paris with a broken arm and a fractured game plan, you will be eaten alive by the competition. Sinner knows this fact perfectly well. He planted the seed of doubt at the exact right moment. His shocking message continues to echo through the tennis world as we wait for the next chapter of this brutal rivalry to unfold. This is not just about recovering for the Rome Masters anymore. This is about absolute tour survival. We are witnessing a historical shift right in front of our eyes. The predator has officially become the prey. For the last 2 years, Carlos Alcaraz stood alone at the top of the mountain. He dictated the pace of the modern game with sheer violence. He forced every single player to match his insane speed and unbelievable power. The entire tour was desperately trying to find a way to counter his explosive energy. But the dynamic at the very top of the sport has completely flipped. Jannik Sinner is no longer the quiet kid chasing the Spanish superstar. Sinner is actively setting the new rules of engagement. This is the most dangerous kind of power shift imaginable. Sinner does not just defeat his rivals anymore. He systematically dismantles them while preserving his own body. When Alcaraz steps onto the clay court today, he feels an immense invisible pressure. He knows he has to hit absolutely perfect shots just to stay competitive in the rally. He has to run faster and hit harder because his baseline defense is failing him due to the pain. The Italian is calmly waiting for those inevitable physical breakdowns. He is weaponizing his own stability against the chaotic brilliance of Alcaraz. The rest of the men on the ATP Tour are watching this dramatic shift with wide eyes. Top-tier competitors like Alexander Zverev see the bleeding weakness in the Spanish armor. Zverev knows exactly how devastating a major injury can be to a career. The locker room knows they cannot match the pure raw talent of Carlos, but they now realize they do not have to. Sinner just handed everyone the ultimate tactical blueprint. You do not beat the Spanish phenom by hitting the ball harder than him. You beat him by dragging him into deep physical waters and waiting for his muscles to fail. The tactical adjustment required by Juan Carlos Ferrero is monumental. He has to literally reprogram a player who relies on pure instinct and fiery passion. You cannot simply tell a fierce competitor to stop chasing down impossible drop shots. That fire is what made him a major champion in the first place. But that same fire is currently burning his body to the ground. Sinner does not have this internal conflict. His emotions are perfectly regulated. His heart rate stays low even in the 5th set of a major final. This emotional and physical regulation is the true divide between the two players right now. The era of the unstoppable two-headed monster is tilting heavily to one side. Sinner is rising rapidly, while the weight of expectations and physical trauma is crushing the Spanish camp. The aura of invincibility surrounding Carlos is completely gone. It has been replaced by heavy medical tape and grim expressions from his coaching box. The clock is ticking relentlessly. Rome is next, and the red clay of Paris is looming directly ahead. Roland Garros is widely considered the ultimate test of human endurance in professional tennis. It is a grueling 2-week marathon of brutal baseline rallies that demands absolute physical perfection. Carlos Alcaraz is staring right at the most critical juncture of his entire young career. Can Ferrero step up and convince his stubborn champion to abandon his flashy style? Can he force Carlos to play conservative tennis for the sake of long-term survival? Or will the fierce Spanish pride force the young star to risk a catastrophic permanent injury on the biggest stage in the world? Jannik Sinner already made his definitive move. The Italian threw down the psychological gauntlet with his calculated physical dominance and his shocking public message. The cold reality of the professional tour is finally setting in for the Spanish team. Raw explosive talent is a beautiful thing for the fans to watch. But structured biological efficiency is what actually wins the war of attrition. The entire tennis world is holding its breath, waiting to see how Ferrero and Alcaraz respond to this unprecedented threat. Will Carlos find a miraculous way to answer the brutal message on the court? Or will the cold calculating Italian machine completely crush his French Open dreams before the tournament even begins? The tension is reaching an absolute boiling point. To find out exactly how this bitter rivalry unfolds, and to stay ahead of every major breaking update on the tour, you need to subscribe to the channel right now. We will be tracking every single tactical shift and medical update from Rome all the way to Paris, so make sure you subscribe today and join us as we witness the ultimate showdown.